Welcome to another episode of Tech Beyond Gender. Today, we are thrilled to welcome our guest, Suz Lingaard. Sue has been in the technology sector since 1995, beginning her career in the Netherlands as an IT help desk staff. In 2009, she made the move to New Zealand, where she has continued to build an impressive career. Her dedication to ensuring that solutions remain relevant and continue to add value to the business is matched by her passion for service management, processes, technology, and people. As a pragmatic and down-to-earth leader, Sue is committed to encouraging her teams to reach their full potential. We are excited to dive into her journey and insights today. Welcome, Sue. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Meena. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. I really need to acknowledge your paintings first behind in your wall. It just looks so amazing. The colors, wow, so vibrant.
Thank you, Meena. I keep discovering new talents in myself. I started painting in April this year and really got onto it and into it, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Wow. And
Yep.
I remember that you mentioned you're bringing paintings for your workmates as well, right?
I did as a farewell present for my 28 big team with people from all walks of life and all positions within our team. I've painted them all a painting each. That made me remember of them. Wrote a little story on the back, so to thank them for the journey that we had and during our last team.
Wow, you are so talented. I think we can continue talking about your painting journey easily.
Yeah,
But
we
why
could.
don't you start off with your tech journey to begin with? So
Yeah, that will definitely be longer than my painting journey. So yes.
So what sparked your interest in tech and how did you begin your journey?
I never studied anything IT. I didn't until I started working later on in life. I went to a very generic school that I realized that if I finished school with that, I would not have much of a career at all. And I decided to do a secretary diploma that took me a year. And I started working when I was just 17, full time, started at an insurance company. And there, of course, I got introduced to the first little bit of technology. Didn't really look like the beautiful technology that we currently have, very old. But we worked with WordPerfect as a letter program, or however you want to call it. Like we currently have Microsoft Word, that was WordPerfect. And I started typing the similar sort of letters time and time again. And I thought this needs to be done in a much handier way. So I started discovering mail merge, which meant that I could make a few standard letters, have an address file next to it, and then I could merge them. That was sort of my first discovery of technology. I got a different job and I did 6 steps back and went to a building company where they only had the good old-fashioned typewriters. It was very exciting when that got upgraded to an electronic typewriter with memory function in it, and I did the similar thing there. Moving on in my career, people started noticing that I enjoyed those sort of software or automation or smarter things in life to just make your life at work much simpler. I got in a newspaper on a Saturday, and I read a newspaper from an ad from the Rabobank who was looking for trainees for service desk employees. You didn't need to have any knowledge of technology. They were going to educate you. It was like a day that they organized, and you got straight away screened on logics, psychological, and you got interviews. And it was about 50 people that turned up there, and they were going to hire 10. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try because it sounds really interesting and it would have my interest. So that was my first, I was successful, obviously. And it was my first touch of real technology. Good old-fashioned networks. We used a Banyan Vine network. I haven't seen that afterwards anymore, so it must have been very old. the big, huge data centers with big computers in it, etc., etc. We got introduced to everything, and that sparked the start of my career in IT. We can keep going on there because I started as a service desk employee and got into it. I loved it. Got more knowledge and became a Microsoft Office specialist. That was sort of second line. So I climbed up the ladder a little bit. I was very stoked. And a little while further, it must have been probably 2 or 3 years within that career, I became the manager of that service desk, and I did that for quite a long time, from a small service desk of 8 employees till in the end one of 40, with all sorts of roles that we led. It was great. I moved on after that again into service management, because while I was working in the service desk, I got introduced to that process way of thinking and where the smarts are for not only looking at your incidents, but also why do your incidents exist? What are you going to do to fix it? Was it caused by a change, etc., etc.? So I moved into that ITIL process management part and managed the incident, problem, and change processes within the Rabobank in different ways. And as the last role that I had was leading the team that managed our service management tool before I came to New Zealand in 2009. There, of course, it was like a little bit horrendous. With the global financial crisis and me coming into a country with a work permit, that didn't really help. So the first 2 years that I was in New Zealand, I spent working in a Harley Davidson shop selling motor clothing and accessories. The fun was that they moved over to a different tool to manage their warehouse and the sales. So I could use a little bit of my IT expertise to help them out and make that go smooth. So that was fun. And not much later, Vodafone entered my life as a service management specialist, and later on managed the department until a restructure hit. I applied for a role at BNZ, also got hired in the role at Vodafone, but decided to move over to the BNZ, and that was January 2015 in the role of service management specialist. So all still in IT, thinking about how things can be smarter, how processes can be leaner, how they can deliver insights, reports, etc., where we can find that relationship between problems and changes. So within my service management role, I set up quite a few reports that people had access to with our old tool. It was more like a dashboard, and later on helped the leadership team of technology and all their team leaders through an ITIL simulation together with Microsoft, with their specialists, to ensure that we got more support for ITIL ways of thinking, as well as we could start our maturity assessments and show that we were growing in the way we started and monitored our processes within the BNZ on incident, problem, and change, configuration management, etc. Until my eyes got sparked by an RPA role, and that was, they call it RPA Operations Manager, and RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, which is probably the similar things as we did with the old screen scraping bits years ago, but now you automate keystrokes and mouse clicks, so it's more helpful for very mundane and repetitive tasks for back office people, which you can then automate with software. So I've been doing that and leading that since 2017 until today. And it got expanded with robotic desktop automation as well as workflow automation with our Vega tool. And that's where I am today, leading from small to big teams, being part of a team, all sorts. And I really, really enjoy it.
Wow. So your experience since 1995, you just summarized.
Yes.
So that's across 2 different countries, right? Netherlands and New Zealand. And how has it been for you? Like, did you really notice a significant cultural shift between the 2 countries?
Yes, I did. not only a cultural shift, but also the level of maturity in ITIL processes, which made me utilize my knowledge, obviously, quite well. So that was great. It gave a lot of satisfaction. And everyone knows that the Dutch are quite direct and honest in their feedback and opinions. So I definitely noticed a cultural difference there. People are not very used to getting their feedback that direct, which is always, I never mean it in a harmful way. It just comes out very direct without beautiful words around it or with like little cushions around it. You just get it from me in the way I see it and feel it. And especially in the beginning as well, I didn't have the vocabulary. I missed those subtle words as well, so it was very hard. So especially in the beginning, I got very straight and to the point and blunt, probably. But yeah, that was the biggest part that I noticed in New Zealand, as well as the "she'll be right" mentality. The "oh yeah, we will fix that. Don't worry, it will come right." Where in some cases it won't come right, or when you implement something with a "she'll be right" mentality, you can just calculate on your little hand of 5 fingers that it will go wrong at some stage. Those were the biggest differences that I noticed.
Yeah, I can actually relate to the communication bit because, again, I'm coming from India. The way we converse is, again, quite different. And
Yeah.
we don't really mean anything very sinister when we communicate, but at times it can just be perceived as very direct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how
Likewise.
did you overcome that challenge specifically with regards to communication?
People probably got used to me, to be fair, because I can play a role to a certain level, but when I come under pressure, I fall back to my personality and I cannot hide that. That is what it is. What I did find out, though, is that my personality suits an operational environment or a where things need to be done or outcomes need to be achieved. That personality of mine suits there very well. I am one that just keeps going. Don't have if we don't have time, if we have pressure, we can't do fluff around. We need to keep going. So I don't know if I did mellow a bit, obviously. But as soon as you put me under pressure, that good old in-breast of me comes out, and that will be very direct. Probably because the people are quite kind as well. They take it in some way, but I have offended people in the process, which I quite often notice. And I will go back to them and say, I apologize if I say things that hurted you or offended you, because that's never my purpose. And then we spoke about it. So I do think that because I notice it and go back to the person, I quite often resolve it, but not always.
Yeah, do you think that aspect of your personality has had any impact on your career?
It must be. I haven't really gave that a thought, but it must be. I kept growing in my roles, so it must have had an aspect that people liked, and at least I got the things done, and that obviously got noticed by people that needed the things done. Yeah, and it moved me into that direction of operations management, making sure that the lights are on and the people are guided um, and helped where they had issues if they couldn't resolve it.
Like you mentioned, right, in your very early days when you were working with WordPerfect, you just loved the technical components and stuff. I don't think, have you had any hands-on role recently, or are you more in the management side?
Lately, I was more in the management side, although I had hands-on roles in the operation side of robotics. So I still knew how to get a robot back up and running if he didn't do his job. And I still knew where sort of integrations were with APIs, but not the hands-on part.
Do you miss your hands-on aspect of your role?
Yes, I do. But I get the satisfaction back when I'm talking to the team. When you ask them questions if things can be done differently or why have they chosen to do it in a different way, is where you do get your, excuse me, where you can utilize your knowledge again, your logical thinking, and you learn again. So I love that part. So yes, it will never go. I will always be involved.
Cool. So, in your experience of working in tech since 1995, what were the biggest challenges you faced in your career in technology?
Keeping up with the knowledge, because it moved so fast, from typewriters to Pons cards and tapes to do your backups onto now clouds, tiny little computers. I think keeping your knowledge up is one challenge. The other challenge has always been, well, in my early career, mostly being seen as a woman with no education, because I didn't have an education, as I said. I only got my bachelor degree in business engineering when I was 38. So I quite often heard that I hit my glass ceiling, as they always say so nicely, because of the lack of my education or my degree, as well as the fact that I was a female. So I remember very vividly a conversation with one of my managers at the Rabobank in Holland, who said to me, I see so much potential in you, but you've hit your glass ceiling because you don't have any education, and you're a female. And I said to him, but why do I need an education when you already see the potential in me? I don't understand that bit. And the female bit, I just didn't even acknowledge that he mentioned that, because that's, if you start acknowledging that, then it becomes a point and an item. So I just brushed over that and just moved on as if I've never heard it.
Wow. I'm surprised that it was actually explicitly said, right?
Yes,
But which
it
year was it?
was.
Like in 2000, early
No,
2000?
before 2000. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just decided to brush it off, right?
The female part, yes, because I didn't feel that it was worth the discussion.
Hmm.
I felt that if I had my bachelor degree sorted, that would break that barrier anyway. And eventually it did. I mean, it wasn't that time, and that person was such a male in the environment that I thought, just straight away in my head, I thought, this is not worth the discussion. I'm going to have a discussion that ends nowhere, where all he wants to say to me, and he meant it kind, but say to me, you do so well, you are so awesome, but you need a degree and move on here. And where his female part came from, I thought I'd just leave it. It's okay. You don't know better. You will see. And there I was. But thanks to him, I started my bachelor degree when I was 32, and I ended having that when I was 38. It was 2 years in between, 2 extra years that I had due to some private life circumstances that happened, that it took me 2 years longer. But yeah, just next to my full-time work, achieved my bachelor degree, which then made me, in the meantime, I grew anyway and led the service desk. So I didn't really know where it came from, but it worked.
Yeah, what you just mentioned was is something that many of us have experienced, right, at different stages, where it might not be very explicit, but the message can be very subtle that you are a woman and you are in tech. That sort of comes up. And as how you said, right, a lot of us, especially me, I've just sort of decided to brush it off rather than get into an argument. And there is a lot of self-silencing. A lot of women don't want to talk about it, don't want to acknowledge it, and even speak about it, right? They just sort of feel that it can possibly negatively impact their career in the long run. What are your thoughts about that?
I have to disagree with it. I talk about everything. In this case, it was just not worth the argument. But I know there are gender differences. I'm not ignoring it. I acknowledge it. But I also feel that by acknowledging it and mentioning it constantly, there's an emphasis on it. So I see people for people. So I don't see color, I don't see race, I don't see age, but I also don't see sex or gender. So to me, that's the way it should work, if you ask me. We should all be one and be hired and praised for our abilities and our achievements and our knowledge and our passion, and not because I am a woman or because my colleague next to me is a man. We should utilize the strength in ourselves as people. And that to me is more important than emphasizing that a woman should be in technology, or a man should become a nurse or a flight attendant. To me, it's not relevant. We all have different qualities as people, and those should be emphasized.
Exactly.
But I won't shy away of highlighting it when it's unfair in any way, on gender, on color, on knowledge, on political reasons, etc. Also, don't shy away. I'm now over my 50s, so I also don't shy away to talk about menopause or breast cancer or prostate cancer that's around there, where people need to talk about those things. If we're not discussing it, it won't be out in the open, and we will never be understood as people.
Yeah. So having considerably worked in two different countries, especially when it comes to gender bias, have you noticed any difference between the two countries?
No.
It's been the same.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
it's
I feel like
interesting, right?
Sorry?
It's interesting how certain stereotypes and biases are just common across many different countries.
They're just in people, and of course I do it too. I've got my own biases that are very unconscious, that if someone points it out to you, you think, oh yeah, now that you're saying that, I realize it. I never really thought about it, that I thought in that way. So that's where I think it's good to mention it, but I don't think that putting the emphasis on it would help or benefit any of us.
Yeah. So what would benefit?
Acknowledging each other as people and our qualities that we have and that we bring to work. If I'm a logical thinker, make sure that you utilize my logical way of thinking. If you are a great people manager, acknowledge that you have those qualities and that can bring harmony and unity to a team. If John has a great ability of servicing customers, you should utilize him in his service areas. I think that's the way we should handle these things.
Like when I was growing up in India, it was very easy, like as I was growing up, to see my mom taking up certain roles and responsibilities within the house, which was deemed to be, okay, this is what a woman does for the family, and this is what a man does for the family. And then I came to New Zealand as a student. I was staying with a Kiwi family, and it was exactly the same. The woman had to shoulder a major responsibility of maintaining the family, cooking for the family and everything. Whereas it was different. I was like quite surprised. I was like, wow, it still exists even miles away.
It did, obviously, when I grew up as well. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked. My dad, until he died, could not even cook. My parents were separated, so he came up with all sorts of creative ideas on having dinner, but he didn't cook for himself, not even back then. If I look at my current relationship with my husband cooks, he cleans. I mean, any person can. So this to me is a detriment to where we should be. And then he's 65. He came from an older generation as well, but he learned to cook, he learned to clean, and there's no discussion on who cleans or who cooks. It's the one that comes home first that starts cooking. So yeah, it's in my household there is no real male and female tasks anymore, even though I was brought up like that as well as he. But it slowly starts changing, I think. I hope.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about menopause as well. Now, what challenges are you aware that really impacts women during that phase of their life?
I think that people do not understand what it does to you, how it affects us as a woman, how our mood swings are, and how foggy our brain gets, for instance. And if we do not talk about it, we can never expect anyone to understand what we're going through. And when we talk about it, I think it becomes easier for others to understand as well as for us to handle it and to get confronted with it. I don't even brush over it, but I do laugh about it sometimes. I remember handing out T-shirts that we had within B&Z Technology, and I was handing them out. So I had the list of names and sizes, and there was someone standing in front of me that I worked with for years, and I just, for the life of me, couldn't remember the name. And I was looking at it with glazy eyes and said, "Sorry, menopause kicked in, forgot your name. Can you help me?" And we both laughed and thought, well, it's a real life example. It happens. It's okay.
You know, that happened with that was a conversation between you and me. I came to pick up the t-shirt from you last year.
There was not only you, there was another one. There was actually another few that where it happened. I just gone blank.
Yeah.
And it just happens, and I laugh, and I say I tell people it's the menopause. I don't know what else it could be. And we just laugh about it, and I've got hot flushes and I laugh about it. And sometimes I'm very emotional, I need to cry. That's fine. I'm not going to brush that away either. It happens.
Mhm. But do you think being too open about menopause can have an impact on your career advancement opportunities? Because a lot of
Probably.
women have this sort of issue over a prolonged period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be like 10 years or a little bit more than that. It's
Yeah.
like if we continue speaking about that, are we going to be unconsciously putting our career on hold?
It, it's probably a risk, but I don't. I'm not willing to accept that risk and silencing. I still know that I function at a high level, even though I'm suffering from some menopause effects, which is fine. I also take HRT, which means that my symptoms are sort of mellowed down, which is great because that means that there's something that you can do to help yourself not really suffering from many of those side effects. So I also think that that's a good idea. We should not have to suffer as women when there is something that can help us as well. But yes, we probably get put in a corner every now and then as an emotional wreck or a whinging woman or whatever it could be. But I refuse to shut up about it because they
So
can also see that I function well.
over this period of like almost 30 years of being in technology, do you think these conversations have become more acceptable and open now than before? Or
Yes,
has it
probably.
always been there in Holland?
No, it probably becomes a bit more open. Now, I was obviously much younger and didn't really hear many of those conversations because they were like 20 years ahead of me, or probably 30. Um, so I was not really confronted with it if we talk about the menopause symptoms. But I think in Holland, everyone's quite open about illnesses or disabilities or anything that holds them back. So um, no, I don't think. No, I think it's like similar type of things. It's just human life that move on a bit. And yes, in Holland we are a little bit more open than we are now in New Zealand. But there's so much information about it now. There's at the BNZ, I really love that we have working groups for it and communities that we support each other. When I think about it, it's probably started a bit earlier in the Netherlands, where there were heaps of documentaries about people in the workforce with symptoms of menopause. But of all things that you can think of, are documentaries from in Holland. So they're pretty progressive in that regard.
So would you like to talk about the symptoms of menopause, which can actually affect one's ability? And what age do you think you can expect to start seeing these symptoms?
I'm not an expert, so let's leave that up to the medicals. But I think it can start as early from 40, or even when you probably have symptoms of menopause in your early 20s. So it's hard to say where it starts. There are some reasons when it starts very early. The natural way would probably be somewhere between 45 and 55. The way I noticed it was heavy night sweats. I just woke up in the middle of the night being drenched, had to get out of bed and change your jammies. That's how I started noticing it, and that became a pattern. As well as I started forgetting names. Became a bit more emotional. I'm already a passionate person, but I became a bit more emotional, started crying on certain things out of the blue that you thought, where does this come from? So those, and then of course the hot flushes during the day, where you just need to strip down or wave with whatever funny thing you can find on your desk to wave your cool air with. And concentration, all sorts. I'm lucky that I don't have very extensive hot flushes during the day. But as I said, I've also consumed HRT, which I started with beautiful patches, those little rectangle things that you have to put on twice a week. But I'm allergic to it. So after I looked like SpongeBob SquarePants, I changed over to HRT and pill shapes. So I take them orally.
Oh, so that's the way you sort of managed your symptoms, and you were able to carry on with your work as usual. Yeah.
Yep. I've always carried on with my work. I've never taken a sick day because I felt menopausal. But I can understand that you can do that too, because it's not only menopausal, but periods with people that are very, very heavy that you need to take some time out. So, although that's not really needed usually either, because you can go to the doctor and get that checked, because you might have endometriosis, for instance, which we need to talk about lots more too, because lots of girls are sent to the doctor and then sent home and says, nah, part of being a woman with having lots of bleeding and being out for a week with pain, etc. So that's not all needed either.
Yeah, with all the conversations I've had right so far, imposter syndrome is something that comes out very obvious with a lot of the women, be it being in leadership roles or being in technical roles. The imposter syndrome is like sort of very prevalent and very much spoken about. Now, I was just thinking, with the imposter syndrome, it becomes even more challenging, right, to actually convince myself that I probably need to slow down because I'm experiencing perimenopausal or menopausal syndrome. You'll be like symptoms. You'll be like, no, I just want to push it through. I'm as it is. I'm not that great with doing my job. Have you experienced that? Maybe that's why you didn't really take any time off. Or that was an issue for you.
I don't think I've experienced that. Having said that, I never really doubt myself if I can do something. So I just motor on, but not only motor on, I talk about it as well. And just say to one of my colleagues, oh my God, I'm really scared that I can't finish this. Or, oh my God, I can't really think properly today. Can you give me a hand? Or I refuse to make myself a victim of my menopause and try to find ways around it.
That's great. That's an inspiration. You probably need to be an advocate for this now.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. So now what strategies you have worked across two different countries, across different organizations, and you've been managing teams. What strategies do you employ to ensure diversity and inclusion is there within your team, within your organization?
In the first leadership role that I had at the service desk at the Rabobank, it wasn't really a measure. So we didn't really pay attention. And with my way of looking at people, when I don't see gender, color, or race, I didn't really put it up front. Having worked at the BNZ, where we do have measures now, I worked very closely with my people leader to make sure that all the scales of diversity that we could find were looked at, as well as adhered to when it was there for your role. So if we had to choose between two equal people, we probably chose one that would fulfill our diversity wishes. But our people leader is great in that he always kept a very, very good eye on how our balances were between male and female, locations as well, education, the areas where you were born, your beliefs, anything. We kept quite a good balance there. I think we had all sorts of the planet, as well as all sorts of the human beings in our team.
Nice. But do you actually see a drop in number of applications that come through for any senior technical roles by gender?
Yes, I think in the senior technical roles, there always have been more males applying for it than females have. And that might be if you look at the logics, that's you invest in your career, it's time to start a family. It's still only given to a female to become pregnant, not for a male. So I think that's usually the time and the place of where pregnancy comes around the corner, and you take maternity leave and take time out, and where the imposter syndrome probably starts creeping up even better, because then the ladies probably think, oh, I've been out of the workforce and now I have a baby and I cannot be fully invested in my work, and I feel that I have to do all the things together. So yes, I do see less females applying for a senior leadership role than males.
Okay, so not necessarily just senior technical roles, it's even senior leadership roles.
Yes, yes.
So what are the most significant changes you have seen in the tech industry since you started?
I think the most significant one is making technology education available for girls, and girls become aware that they can do it as well. And I've been part of the Girls in Technology part from Edwina, who is very very active in that bit, and we had little coaching programs for girls in year 12 and 13 here, to show that there is all sorts you can do as a woman. You can actually do whatever you want as a woman, as long as you are capable of it and capable of learning it. I feel that more on the educational bit is there, and girls can play with tractors, where when I was younger, they didn't really let you play with tractors, for instance. Now, I couldn't care much, but it is much more common now that girls can become a farmer, girls can fly a plane, anything you want, you can do, as long as you put your head towards it and your efforts. And you need to be capable of it, obviously.
What are the emerging trends in tech that you are really passionate about or looking forward to getting your hands dirty with?
I love the automation that we're currently in, automation area, I'd say, that we're currently in. AI is very hot at the moment, which has a lot of automation in it. The robotics part is it was good fun as well, which was emerging, but it's not really the new stuff. Cloud computing to me is handy, cost effective, and the fact that you don't have to operate it yourself. But I definitely think that the generative AI bits are very, very interesting, and I've got a lot to learn on that area.
So how do you stay current with the rapid advancements in technology?
I gave up the illusion that I can for 100%, because you can never. There is so much happening that's undoable. So I listen a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books, surf a lot online to find the things that I'd like to think. And I talk to people often and have discussions with people that are very deep into that technology, for instance. And that's refreshing, and that I can learn a lot from that.
So what advice would you give to young women who are aspiring to enter the tech field?
So if you know from a young age that you are really interested into technology, please move on into your education and find the right education for you that suits your interests and your needs. And just do it. Just do it. You can do it. You can do anything you want and set your minds to. So just do it.
What do you think? Like, okay, education is great. So creating awareness amongst school and university students about technology options that are there for employment is great. But at the same time, what else do you think needs to change, especially in the tech industry or workplaces, so women continue to be in the technical space, right? As how you mentioned, even the number of women applying for senior technical roles are very less. So what can organizations do? What can teams do? What can team managers do to better facilitate the process of retaining women within technical roles?
That's a really hard question, and I don't really have a cookie cut answer to that. I think what we can do as women that work in that environment is keep being open about our challenges, but also on how we can be helped, how we can be successful, so that we're not a second thought if they want to hire someone. We need to be a bit more open about our successes and our struggles and how we overcome that. But we don't need to go into a detail of sorts, because I'm sure that men have struggles in the same way as we have. They just don't talk about it. They look at those things in a different way than we do. So sometimes it's just diving, do it. And for us that are in the workforce, show that we are capable. But that's what we're doing with being awesome every day.
And I do agree, like it's important for us to talk about it. The more we speak about it, who knows, it can actually, something can resonate with someone, and a slow transformation or a shift in mindset could possibly happen.
Yes, I agree. Pragmatism to me is key. I love pragmatism in any way of the workforce and life. Don't overcook things. Do it. If you think you can do it, do it.
Nice. Now, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance working in a demanding industry like tech?
You come up with the tricky questions now. I paint.
Yeah, but that's a recent one, right? I can't believe you just recently started painting.
That was the first one.
Oh, wow.
I do find hobbies. So I love reading. I love traveling. I definitely use up all my annual leave that I can on travel. when I started a sip and paint class, I thought, oh, this is really, really fun. So I started another one with my girlfriends, and then thought, oh, I can do that myself. So went on YouTube, found sip and paints, and bought some canvases and paint. And that got me painting by now about 40 paintings. So that's heaps, including the 28 that I gave away. So I always try to find something before that and still do. I love baking. So I find something that just takes your mind off your work, hopefully, and gives you something else to do. But also, I love my work. So I don't really mind. I will not work 80 hours a week, as an example, but I don't mind talking about it. I don't mind helping my colleagues. They can always call me whenever they want. So in that regards, I will always be there. But yeah, to wind down, I find a hobby, and yeah, painting, baking, reading, traveling.
Mm. So that's actually 40 paintings since April this year.
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had mentors, Sue?
No, I look
No.
up to people, but I never had mentors. I I feel that I have enough people that I can go to ask questions and ask for help. But a mentoring program gives me a bit of the itchies. That's too much for me. That's not me.
So why is it too much for you?
There, the mentors that I tried it, so I had to tried to force their way of thinking onto me and didn't let me think for myself in my own way, and that caused struggles. So that put me off the mentoring path, and I didn't feel that I needed it in that much of a structured way. Because I learned along the way, and I found my people that I could learn from and could learn the right things from along the way as well. So that's probably the biggest reason.
Mm. So do you think working in tech industry, it's important to network, like do you actually make a conscious effort to network after working hours, not specifically within the same organization, but going out for meetups or other
I don't.
industry get-togethers? You don't.
I No, I don't. But I do in my private life have friends that are techies as well, which probably means that you're already networking, but in a more informal way. And you come across a lot of people that know people that know people. So your networking happens along the way. I do not make a conscious effort to go to certain networking events. No.
Okay, good. So, what are your thoughts on the future of women in tech? What do you see the industry heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think we keep being awesome. We keep bringing ourselves into work. I've got good hopes that all our quirkiness and things that we have in life as a woman will be accepted and understood. And we keep shining and do what we always do very well. That's what I hope and see.
Now, looking back, what would you say to your younger self just starting out in tech in 1995?
In 1995, I probably would have said to myself, don't go to secretary school, or that was actually 1980 something. Don't go to secretary school, move on and become a first aid doctor. That's probably what I would have said. Um, but but missing that path by now, because I'm not going to go into medical education anymore. That's way late. I probably would have said, gosh, that's a hard one actually. That would have nothing to do with technology. I would say be yourself, be confident in what your abilities are, and be open to learn and absorb all the things that interest you, that you really enjoy, and become your awesomer self. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, learn from them, and move on.
Cool. And how do you define success? What are you most proud of in your career so far?
I am proud in my career of the awesome teams that I have built time and time again. And I know that they're awesome and great teams because I still speak to quite a few of those since the time that I have started working. Even from one of my first call center jobs when I was 17 or 18, I think, even down to my colleague that I had at my first job when I had a secretary job at the insurance company. Service desks that I've created, as well as now still people that I have regular dinners with that we met along the way. So I think I'm most proud of the great teams and the personal interactions and friendships that came out of that. And of course, along the way, awesome successes. But to me, it's the connections that I've built and the great teams that did great things for the companies.
Thank you, Sue. Like, I'm just surprised, like we were in the same floor at one stage, but we didn't really get to talk much with each other, right?
No, that's correct. Too busy.
Yeah, and this is the first time we're having a conversation, and I'm like really, yeah, it's so nice to listen to your stories and your perspectives.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've got a very down-to-earth perspective on everything. Everything's quite pragmatic in my life.
Yeah,
and I don't take offense to anything or anything. I'm happy to learn. I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to talk to about anything. That's always fine.
And I know you just finished off from BNZ. So
yes.
What's your next journey like?
Well, the first journey will be a real journey to Vietnam for 3 weeks. And after that, it will be finding a new role somewhere.
Are you going to be looking for roles within New Zealand or just anywhere?
Yes. No, yeah, I will stay in New Zealand for a few more years. Yes. I definitely do not go back to the workforce in the Netherlands or live in the Netherlands. So no. If I'm going to live somewhere else, it will be probably Spain or so, nice and warm.
Yeah.
And where I speak a little bit of the language.
Oh. Great. Thank you so much, Sue, for your time. Really appreciate your time and loved talking to you. And I'm sure we will catch up again soon and enjoy your holidays.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Meena.